It may have just turned December, but all of a sudden, March town meeting is starting to come into view and focus. Budgets are being hammered out, or starting to, at school districts and select boards. In Manchester, the select board will be hearing from town officials and others who have a role in shaping the outlook for the town's municipal budget during their all-day meeting on Friday, December 8th, over at the Park House, where various town departments and others who have historically received public support for their work will be heard from. One of those is the Manchester Community Library, which will be seeking an increase in its town appropriation from approximately $243,000 to $317,000. It's the first time in several years the library has sought any increase. We spoke with the library's executive director, Ed Surgeon, to learn more about their ask.
Well, I think that I'd like to say first that the library is very grateful for the loyal backing of Manchester voters. The residents of Manchester have always strongly supported the library, and the library's really pleased to continue multiplying the taxpayer dollars that we receive with substantial annual fundraising efforts, which currently are double the town appropriation. We raise $500,000 every year, and we also have endowment income that combines to support the library budget. And we try to be really, really responsible stewards of all the money that's entrusted to us. Like Burr and Barton Academy and the Rec Park, the library is recognized as being among Manchester's premier public assets and resources. And we serve Manchester with a truly first-rate library that last year doubled attendance to more than 50,000 visitors and increased to almost 800 programs and events. We're striving to be the best library in Vermont. We think that our request is reasonable and worthy of support for several reasons. It brings public support for the Manchester Community Library closer to that given public libraries elsewhere in Vermont and nationally. It's comparable to the support that's given to libraries by similar Vermont towns on a tax per resident basis. And most importantly, we're delivering tremendous value for the investment made, providing the high quality and quantity programs, events, services, and resources that Manchester expects and needs of its library. The reality has been that over the last several years, the library has run deficit budgets, and we have largely been able to address that with one-off funding sources that largely were COVID related. So we received some money in the payroll protection program and the like that amounted to about $300,000. But it's also safe to say that those kinds of sources are not going to be available going forward. And at the same time, the town's contribution to the library budget, being flat funded, has decreased over time to where it is now only at about 24% of our total budget. If you look at incorporated libraries, that would be libraries in Vermont that have a nonprofit as the core of their organization. They receive about 2/3 of their funding from their towns, and they raise about 1/3. Ours is flipped entirely the other way, where we're doing the library and private donors are the bulk of our funding, and the town is a quarter. And undoubtedly, again, we're tremendously appreciative of the annual appropriation and the support of Manchester residents. But we are looking, as we improve the financial sustainability of the library long term, which is what allows us to be able to provide all of these programs and services and resources, that there's a better balance.
In the current fiscal year, the public contribution is 24% of your total budget.
Yes.
What would that be, the same percentage should voters approve this ask for $317,000? That would be also roughly 24%?
No, this would take us to 31% for fiscal 25. But an important point there is that we actually are right now working to a budget planned that would be a tiny bit lower than fiscal 24. So we're trying to exert maximum fiscal responsibility and not grow the budget unreasonably. And we've worked hard this last year. We now have a 3-year going forward budget projection, and we are working to very, very carefully contain our costs. Not surprisingly, most of our costs, as is true of all libraries, would be payroll and benefits. Like all organizations, we've seen substantial pressure there. If I just look at healthcare costs, those have risen by double digits year after year after year. Clearly, salaries and wages have gone up, and at the same time, we have worked hard, and we have not increased our number of staff, and I think that's important that we were able, and I'm proud of the fact that we were able to handle twice as many visitors and the increased programs and events without having to resort to increases in staffing, which would typically be expected.
The library's funding request will be decided directly by voters in a separate article on the town meeting warning, and is not built into the basic town budget the Select Board will be presenting to the voters at the floor meeting. Town meeting day this coming year, in 2024, will be held on March 5th. For the GNAT-TV News Project, I'm Andrew McKeever.